this problem, we want to solve the equation 6x minus 1 times x minus 1 equals negative 67x minus 149. Go ahead and start off by saying the numbers look pretty overwhelming, but as long as we do everything the same, we'll be able to factor it at the end and it won't be a big deal. Now we want to give all of our answers as integers or reduced fractions, separate multiple answers by commas. Now one thing you want to look out for here is that it's kind of factored on the left, but it's not 0 on the right. So this is not useful. We need to multiply the left side out so we can bring the stuff from the right side over. Because ultimately we're going to factor it, and that'll be more obvious when we multiply the left side out. So we've got 6x minus 1 times x minus 1. Right, and we just use FOIL here. Right, so 6x times x is 6x squared. And then 6x times negative 1 is negative 6x. And then negative 1 times x is negative 1x. If you write just negative x, that's fine. And then the last, negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And I'm just going to combine the like terms here before we go ahead and plug it back in. So negative 6x minus 1x is negative 7x. We got 6x squared minus 7x plus 1. All right, so now we're going to plug into back to the original problem. Right, remember that was the left side. Now we have 6x squared minus 7x plus 1, the left side, equals what was on the right side before we didn't touch that, negative 67x minus 149. Now it should be more straightforward to see why we need to get 0. On one side, it's because we want to factor it. We have different powers of x, which means we're going to factor it. Right, so we got to make one side 0. A little bit easier to make the right side 0 because there's only two things over here. So we're going to add the 67x to each side, and we're going to add the 149 to each side. And so the 6x squared, it didn't have any common terms with it. Negative 7x plus 67x is plus 60x. And then 1 plus 149 is 150. And that equals 0. Right now, at this point, it's natural to just try to factor it like we normally would. But there is a common factor in each of these, and that is actually 6. You can divide every single one of these by 6. So you can think about factoring out or divide by the 6, which is the greatest common factor. Now, sometimes you might have the greatest common factor, sometimes you might not. You know how to factor that if this front number isn't 1. But I'm going to go ahead and do what's best here, and that's divide everything by 6. Now, once again, even though it won't change the right side, you want to make sure if you're dividing everything by 6, you do both sides. And so on the left side, the 6 and the 6 go away, and we got x squared. 60 divided by 6 is 10, so we got plus 10x. And then 150 divided by 6 is actually just 25. So it works out perfectly. Equals 0 divided by 6 is 0. Right. Now there's definitely no common factors because not all of them have x, and this is a 1 anyway. Right, so there's no common factors. We have to factor now. Right, we always like when the front thing is just x squared or whatever the letter is, because we know we can start filling the factors out with x in front. Two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to 10 would be 5 and 5. And so we got it factored. You can FOIL through to check if you want. And now we set each factor to 0 like we have been. And if you see another way to do it, you might notice that these are both the same factor and you can combine them into one. You can do that as well. It doesn't really matter. So if we set each factor to 0, you know what's going to happen here. We have x plus 5 equals 0 and x plus 5 equals 0. And when you solve it, you're going to get the same answer, right? Because it's the same equation. You subtract 5 on the one on the left, we get x equals negative 5. We subtract 5 on the right, and we get x equals negative 5 as well. Now, you only have one answer because it's the same answer, and that's just negative 5. Don't write negative 5 twice in the answer box. I'm not sure if it will be marked wrong. You don't want to write repeated answers. So our only answer is negative 5 here. All right, but just beware, just because you have something factored at the beginning doesn't mean you should run with it unless if the other side is 0. If the other side is any number that's not 0, anything that's not 0, you've got to do what we did here and multiply it out to start.